But I read this right before the show started, and I wanted to read it. It comes from Denver Dan. Denver Dan writes, Kevin, never called, never written, but I listen. And I know you've been a big John Elway fan over the years. I've been surprised that Elway isn't the comparison you've used for Jayden Daniels. In style, they are as close as any past present QB comparison I could make. Same height, almost same weight, unreal combinations of on-schedule and off-schedule quarterbacking. Their playmaking ability as passers and runners are identical. Clutch gene present at the highest level in both guys. Both are smart with great work ethic. Daniels is today's Elway. Your thoughts? Thank you for that, Denver Dan. I love this, and I love this. I love these kinds of conversations, which we can have this time of year. And you're right. There is a really good comp to be made between Elway and Jayden Daniels. So many similarities between the two. But I think I'm going to beg to differ a bit. I have talked about Elway as a comp, before the draft in 2024, after the draft, during the season. Now, it's not been the only person I've referenced, but Elway has come up for me in terms of comping Jayden to a past quarterback. Steve Young's come up. Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson, Randall Cunningham, even Patrick Mahomes from today's quarterbacks, along with Lamar. I know I've definitely comped him at times to Randall Cunningham, even though I've specifically said that their throwing motions were completely different. Randall had a big windup to his throw. That's not what Jayden has at all. But the Elway comp is a good one. The only thing I would say, Denver Dan, is there are differences. It's not, a complete, identical, it's the same guy that we watched in the 80s, and 90s, into the, I guess, early 2000s. When did he retire? Did Elway retired after the second Super Bowl, which would have been the 98 Super Bowl. So he did not make it into this century as a quarterback. The differences between Elway and Jayden are, first of all, Elway had a bigger arm. John Elway and Dan Marino had two of the biggest arms of the era and two of the biggest arms of all time. It doesn't matter that Jayden's arm isn't, a rifle because he's got plenty of strength and he can make every single throw. But Elway on the run could throw the ball 80 yards. Mahomes is today's Elway in terms of arm strength. Jayden is different. Elway had a much bigger arm. I think Denver Dan, it sounds like you're a Broncos fan, would agree that Elway's arm was all time. Rodgers, Marino, Elway, Mahomes. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few. But in terms of just arm strength, and I'm not talking about Jeff George arm strength. I'm talking about you're able to hit the receiver with the arm strength. That was a big difference between Elway and Jayden. And Elway was just a different build physically. Yeah, they are essentially the same height and almost the same weight. Elway was a little bit heavier, but Elway had a stronger build. He was a big, strong dude at 6'3", 6'4". And he as a runner certainly could outrun people and he could be elusive in the open field, but he could also run you over. Jayden as a runner, though, is more explosive than Elway ever was. I mean, Jayden can take it 80, and no one, and just, once he gets to 50 yards, he's got everybody behind him and he can jog it in from there. Elway didn't have that kind of speed or explosiveness, although he was a great runner. I think Elway, if he had been a quarterback in today's game, would have been used as a dual threat, quarterback with packages, that are in the game today that were not in the game back then. He would have definitely been a part of, zone reads, just like Steve Young, and some of the players. Marino would not have been. But I don't know that there's like a perfect comp for Jayden. His explosiveness as a playmaker is all time. Like it's up there with Vic, Lamar, Randall, Steve Young. The throwing ability isn't about great all-time arm strength. Mahomes has that, in today's game. Rodgers had that, Marino, Elway, etc. But he's got really good arm strength and really good anticipation and touch. And then the competitive clutch gene factor, the clutch factor that you referred to, yeah, he's there with Elway. He is there with Montana. I mean, we've seen it in college. We've seen it now in one season in the pros. There is nothing that rattles him. The game's on the line. He is taking over and is totally comfortable in that spot. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if any of these all-time great quarterbacks, and I'm not putting Jayden into the all-time great quarterback, conversation yet. Of course I'm not. He's played 1 year. But the year was so special, and he did so many things at such an elite level that the comparisons were inevitably going to come. I do like the Elway comp. I'm pretty sure, Denver Dan, I've referenced John Elway. Elway is one of my all-time favorite quarterbacks and one of my all-time favorite football players, period. In that era, I mean, I've talked a lot about how much I love Marino. I consider Marino to be in that conversation of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time. It doesn't matter to me that he didn't win a Super Bowl. The quarterback position is so dependent. We're going to get to some of those conversations. I don't know if you guys heard what LeBron said yesterday on a podcast with Steve Nash, but I'm going to circle back to that at some point on the show. Judging players by championships. LeBron doesn't think that should be the case, even though he was the guy that said not 5, not 6, not 7, etc. We'll get to that. We'll get to LeBron's comments and talk about that in the bigger scope of, all of sports. But Elway was definitely, until Brady kept doing it over and over again until he was his freaking mid 40s, I had Elway as my number 1 of all time. I did. And now it's much more about Brady and then talking about Elway, Manning, Marino, Rodgers. Very shortly, Mahomes is going to be a part of that conversation. And for those of you that saw, Unitas play, I understand his greatness. I do. I can't tell you anything about Otto Graham, honestly. Save that for Livero and company. But yeah, Elway, one of my all-time favorites, and he is an excellent comp for Jayden. Steve Young might be the best comp for, Jayden in terms of that era. But it's not, there's no perfect comp. At this point, we hope that we are at the very beginning of a 10 to 15 year run where 15 years from now, God willing, we're having the conversation about young quarterbacks being compared to Jayden Daniels, which, is in play after watching him for one season.